What's up guys, it's CZ here, welcome back. Now, after such a long time, finally had our first regional. It feels like it's been more than a year since our last regionals, and even though it was not the biggest tournament ever, it was only 4 rounds, I still had a great time, and I'm so happy that we can finally play competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Again. And I went first place undefeated, and this is my Lyrilusc deck profile. My matchups were round 1, I faced Invoke Dogmatica Shadow, round 2, I faced Orchest Machina, round 3, I faced Speedroid Windwitch, and round 4, I faced Dragon Link. So pretty great tournament, very much variety of decks. And the reason I played this deck is because I feel like this deck is really good, but for me, I think it's the most fun deck in this format to play. So I had a blast playing it, and here is my deck profile out of it. So let's begin with the main deck. First up, we have 3 copies of Tarquez Warbler. This card is the best starter because it doesn't have any restrictions. I know Canary is much more powerful of a card on its own, but this card just gives you a free special and then you get another special from your hand or your graveyard. And this card, the problem with it, I would say, is that it doesn't have like 1-card combos. It has more like 2 and 3-card combos because you cannot play with 1 card unless you have like a Harpy's Featherstorm. Then yes, if your hand is really bad, then you can normal summon like one of them and then set Featherstorm and potentially get your turn back because your opponent will not be able to activate any card effects. But the deck does rely a little bit on a kind of a combo deck. So I think if you're trying to counter this deck, then what you should be doing is try to hit the choke points of the deck when it's trying to search. But if this deck is rolling, I think it's really powerful, and this is one of the cards that help you get started. Next up, we have of course 3 copies of Cobalt Sparrow. This card gives you a special summon. When special summon gives you a search for any level 1 winged beast. This is really good with Nerval as well because it's a level 1 winged beast and then you can use your TriBrigade engine. I would say this is more like a pure version of the deck. I do play just a few TriBrigades to make it a little bit better, but I'm not playing like a full-on package like 3 Fractal with 3 Nervals, Kit and Keras. No, I'm not rocking that because I've tried it and I just have gotten tired of them. I'm not saying it's bad and I'm not saying this version is better than the full TriBrigade version, but it's my taste of the deck. So yeah, this card is the one you're trying to be special summoning most of the time early, and when you're trying to do that, you're most likely going to be doing that with one of the 3 copies of the Sapphire Swallow. This card, when you control a level 1 winged beast monster, then you can just special summon it and another monster from your hand, and then you can either special summon your Cobalt Sparrow to get a search. There are also other monsters you can summon. Sometimes you even special summon Nerval with her to get another monster to the field, and you can sometimes do the full combo without even committing to a normal summon. So even if you get Niburu, which you force your opponent to Niburu you at a certain point during the combo, you can still do much more after you get Niburu. So this is why I love this deck. It just gives you so much. Next up, we have 3 copies of Canary. This card is the best extender, so you try to keep this until the very end unless it's absolutely necessary to use it early in order to go for the combo, because if you get Niburu, this is the card that's going to help you get through it because it special summons itself and another monster from the graveyard, and then because of the effects of all those monsters, you can keep putting back more materials from the grave. So even if you summon an Xyz monster with only 2 materials, if one of those materials is Sapphire Swallow, then you can potentially have 4 materials because Swallow will get another one from the graveyard, and then your Wagtail is going to equip itself as material from the graveyard. And this card also boosts the monster by 200 attack points, so it's going to have even more attack. And it also has a neat effect that it prevents the Xyz monster to switch control, and this is actually really useful because triple tactic talents is everywhere, so your opponent is not going to be able to steal your Robin. They will have to use another effect of talents, so they're still going to have to play through all those bounces Robin provides. And the last Lyrilusc monster is 2 copies of Wagtail. Wagtail is good, but I don't think it's worth maxing because it only searches you 1 card. I'm not playing anything other than Bird Call because I feel like every other card is just a little bit lackluster. They didn't really do much unless you're trying to play the FTK version with Ghost Trick Angel of Mischief, but I did not decide to play something like that because I felt it was very inconsistent and very fragile. So yeah, this card searches you Bird Call, still a really good card, and the effect to put itself back from the graveyard as material to a monster comes up a lot. Now for the TriBrigades, I'm only playing 1 Nerval and 1 Fractal. Now, like I said, if you want to play more, then just go for it because the engine is really powerful. The only reason I'm playing only 2 is because I've grown tired of the TriBrigade engine because we've seen it for so long. So the reason these 2 are here is, of course, first, Nerval, you can search it. It's a level 1 winged beast. You can search it with Cobalt Sparrow. You can special summon it with Sapphire Swallow, really easy. And Fractal, just to have something to search with Nerval because it just would not feel right to have no search targets for Nerval when it goes to the graveyard. And also Fractal is not a bad card to drop because you can discard it to send Cobalt Sparrow, which can either enable your Canary or your Tarquez Warbler to have a search target from the graveyard so you can get another card, because if you do not have Cobalt Sparrow, then your plays become much less powerful. So this is why Fractal is a decent card. I'm not playing anything like Denki. I would just play more copies of Fractal if I wanted to. If I draw it, it has a use, but mostly it's to search with Nerval. For the hand traps, we have 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Now, I decided to play hand traps instead of cards like Droplet and Triple Tactics Talent just because our format has a lot of variety, and I felt like cards like Droplet are really good against decks that are like super meta, but against roguish types of decks, hand traps just act so much better. So this is why I think playing hand traps gives me a better chance. So yeah, 3 Ash Blossom, pretty generic. I'm also maining 3 copies of Niburu because as long as the Brave Token engine is not out, then this card is still really powerful. It's a blowout card. You can just win games outright with this card. But of course, when the Brave Tokens are out, this card, I don't think it's even going to want to... I don't think it's going to be worth playing even in the side deck, to be honest, because it'll just get negated and it doesn't give you that much. But of course, we do have some time left until that happens, so I'm going to be maining it until then. And then we play 2 copies of Effect Veiler. The reason I'm playing 2 is because I'm also playing 2 copies of the next card, and I think that when you're playing a deck that does have back row, maxing out on Imperm can sometimes hurt, because when you set other cards along with your Imperm, you give cards like Twin Twisters and Harpy's Feather Duster and Lightning Storm too much value, because when they destroy more than one card, then that's when these cards become really powerful. So this is why I played Veiler as well, just to have something in my hand sometimes when I don't have other back rows, so you can negate stuff. And there were a lot of times where I got Dark Rulered or Droplet and I still have hand traps and I was able to push through, and this is why I play them. Also, another reason why I'm playing 2 Veiler and 2 copies of Imperm is because some people play Crossout Designator without having the space to play both Imperms and Veilers, which is not a good thing for them, because then when you can play both of them, and sometimes they will not be able to negate either with Crossout Designator, because not all decks have the space to play all those hand traps. Like play 2 copies of Ash, 2 copies of Veiler, 2 copies of Imperm, and 2 copies of Niburu. They don't have the space to do that, so they choose to play the more standard card, most of the time being Impermanence. So this is why Veiler is actually really good, and I didn't want to max out Impermanence just for it to get negated by Crossout Designator. For the spells, we have 3 copies of Lyrilusc Bird Call. I think this is one kind of a spell card that any deck would like to have. So being able to get either a Search or a Foolish Burial, and then on top of that, special summoning a monster from your hand with a different name is absolutely ridiculous. This card is so broken, and it just gives the deck exactly what it needs, because sometimes, even if you get the Search, special summoning the Cobalt Sparrow or the Wagtail before you do anything else is very important to get another Search, and also Wagtail gives you another copy of this card every single turn, so this deck always has follow-up. It never gets to the point where it relies on top decking something, because it always searches the follow-up. So even if your board gets broken, or even if you get hand trapped to death, if you get your turn back either with cards like your hand traps or your Featherstorm, you're going to have something to play during the following turn, even if you don't draw a good card. So this is why Bird Call and Wagtail are such good cards together. I am playing 3 copies of Jack in the Hand, and I originally had Werewolf though in here, but I changed it last minute, and I think this is probably one of the best decisions I've ever made, because the problem with Werewolf though, yes, it's more free, but the problem is that you need to commit to a normal summon that most of the times you don't want to, because you do have cards like your Tarquez Warbler that you want to special summon, you have cards like your Birdie Canary which you never want to normal summon unless it's absolutely necessary. So I felt like, yes, Werewolf though gave you exactly what card you needed, and it's more free, and you can activate all, if you have multiples, you can activate all the copies, but still, I felt like this card, even though it seems a little bit gimmicky and trolly, I still think it's really good, because, for example, depending on what you need, you can either show your opponent like 2 starters or 2 extenders, and they're just going to get one of them, and you're going to get the others. For example, if you have a Cobalt Sparrow in your hand, or a Wagtail, you can show them a Burial Canary, a Tarquez Warbler, and something that doesn't really matter. Even if they get one of the starters, like the Warbler or the Canary, you're going to get the other one. So then, if you get your Canary, you can normal summon the Cobalt Sparrow, link it for Linkuriboh, and then use your Canary, bring back your Cobalt Sparrow, search, go for your recital starling, search another one, and then go from there. So this is why I feel like this card is really, really good. And for the one-offs, we have 1 copy of Foolish Burial, 1 copy of 1-for-1, of course, 1 copy of Feather Duster, and 1 copy of Called by the Grave. Foolish Burial, pretty good card. Pretty much the same logic as Fractal, just sends the ones you want to special summon back from the graveyard, but it can also send Nerval if you want to search the Fractal, so you can normal summon a TriBrigade, because, like I said, you don't normal summon a lot during this deck, during your turns, unless it's absolutely necessary. So if you use the combos to special summon, if you keep the Foolish and then send Nerval to search Fractal, then you can normal summon Fractal and do TriBrigade things. 1-for-1, of course, special summoning all of your monsters. Feather Duster I'm maining because I can search it, which is a very cool trick for any deck that plays Featherstorm, and Called by the Grave is Called by the Gravers. We have 2 copies of Featherstorm. I am not maxing it, I used to, but it felt very bricky sometimes, but it's still a really powerful card, which is why I'm still playing it, and most of the times you're gonna be using this even if your combo either gets completely neutered by hand traps, or if your board gets neutered by cards like Evenly Matched, maybe cards like Droplets or Dark Ruler, that's when this card is clutch. So yeah, and of course, even if I sometimes cannot activate it, for example, there have been times where my board was Linkuriboh and the Utopic Draco Future. I will still set this because if my opponent destroys this, if this card is destroyed, I can search Feather Duster, which is really, really huge. And for the last traps, we have 1 copy of Revolt and 1 copy of Imperial Order. Now, Revolt, of course, if you can play the TriBrigade package, having Bear Broom in the extra deck is really crucial, because this card is absolutely ridiculous. Being able to go for Shurake, get all those effects, and get a disruption as well, really good. And Imperial Order, I feel like this format, if you're playing anything other than Sky Striker, you should probably be banning Imperial Order, because it's auto-win against 90% of the decks out there. For the extra deck, we have 1 copy of Ensemble Robin. Robin, I feel like it's the most unfair card in the extra deck, just because it gives you so many bounces, and if you if you combine this with double Dragon Lords, then your opponent is not able to play, because you could just bounce the normal summon monster that attempts to run over Robin with Dragon Lords, and then this card is going to bounce all the special summon monsters, so there's nothing your opponent can do. So yeah, this card is really good, and it also floats. When it goes to the grave, you get back one from the grave for the following. One copy of Promenade Thrush. I'm still playing this card. I've seen some people cut it, but I don't understand why, because when you're going second, summoning this first just gives you a free bait of any kind of back row, especially if you summon this with Cobalt Sparrow, which makes it untargetable. So yeah, I feel like this card is really, really good. Sometimes you don't need to summon 2 recital starling during the combo to search twice, so this card just gives you a free bounce for the back rows and baits something. One of the MVPs of the extra deck is the one copy of Assembled Nightingale, not because she can summon Zeus very easily, just because of her power of sheer pressure and being able to threaten game every single time, because it's very easy now to get so many materials that can summon this card with 6 materials and with Beryl Canary, so she can have 1400 attack and attack 6 times directly, which is enough to go for game. So yeah, this card is absolutely ridiculous, and even if she fails to go for game, then you summon Zeus over it with 6 materials and there's nothing your opponent can do. We played 2 copies of Recital Starling. I'm not maxing this. I don't feel like I ever needed to, because this card just gives you the 2 searches you need, and then usually you're going to be using these 2 for Utopic Future and then Utopic Draco Future. You don't need to play a third one. I don't think the search is very important late game because you already search what you need. So yeah, this card really, really good. Now for the non-Lyrilusc Xyz monsters, we have Utopic Future and Utopic Future Draco. This card, I realized that it's very hard to deal with. I didn't expect everyone to have so much trouble dealing with this card, but being indestructible and also having a negate that steals the monster is actually really good. And I've stolen monsters like Rocket Synchron against Dragon Leagues, which were level 1 monsters, so I could use them for my own Xyz monsters, so that was really clutch there too. And of course we have the one copy of Zeus. You need to play it just because as assembled, I think it's very easy. Also one thing, I'm not playing Downer Magician, and the reason being is not only because the extra deck is super tight, I feel like every card in the extra deck here is very important, but also Assembled Nightingale is very hard to deal with if you have the Cobalt Sparrow under it, because she herself becomes indestructible by detaching a material, and she becomes untargetable if she has Cobalt Sparrow. So if you try to summon Downer Magician on top of her before you go into Zeus, you risk her getting destroyed or targeted by something and leaving the field. So it's very beneficial to just give up on this one extra material for Zeus to hit the field more safely, and then you can use Zeus effect multiple times. And it's not difficult to put 3 materials under assembled anyway, so she's gonna have 4 materials regardless, so I don't think Downer is that necessary. Of course you can play it if you want, but I feel like I didn't need her, and I feel like she's very risky sometimes. For the Link monsters, we have one copy of Linkuriboh. Linkuriboh is important for some hands when you have Beryl Canary, because you need to normal summon either your Wagtail or your Sparrow, link it away, and then bring it back with Beryl Canary. This is why this card is here, and can also protect your Robin. With some combos you can summon this, so you can protect your Robin with this card instead of the Dragon Lords from the normal summon attack. We have one Farage. Farage is crucial because of the Tarquez Warbler. Sometimes you can use your combo, but before you get to use your Tarquez Warbler, if you don't have your Farage in your deck, then you're not going to be able to use it ever during your turn because you have already monsters on the field. But with this card, you can just special summon from the hand, and Warbler doesn't have to be special summoned by her own effect in order to bring back a monster or special summon a monster from the hand, so this is why this card is here. One copy of Broom. Of course, you can search your Revolts, and yes, I know sometimes it contradicts with Beryl Canary, but you don't have to go for either combo, and you don't have to go for both of them during the same turn. Depends on hand, depends on the situation. You can either go for both of them, or not both of them, for either of them, because sometimes getting the Revolt is more powerful, and some other times summoning your future Draco is better. One copy of Dragon Lords. This card replaced the Seamorph package, because like as you've seen, I'm not playing Avian in the main deck as well, and the reason being is because I didn't see the point of the Seamorph package. First of all, the barrier statue I think is completely useless, because you try to special summon a monster that prevents your opponent from special summoning by bouncing all their special summon monsters. So what's the point of having it on the field and a monster prevents special summoning altogether? They just contradict with each other. And Avian, it doesn't protect you from the cards you lose, because this deck loses mostly if you make your board, you lose to either Droplet or Dark Ruler No More, and Avian doesn't protect you from this card. So I feel like this card is much better. Like I said, can protect Robin from the normal summon monster that's trying to run over her, and also banishing one less monster with a TriBrigade is very important, because you want to try to keep as many Lyriluscs in the graveyard as possible with this deck. So this is why banishing 2 instead of 3 can sometimes be very good. We play, of course, the Link 3 Silver Seller. This card is here because of Broom. I did not summon it too much, but the problem is that if you summon, for example, if you get completely neutered by hand traps, you get Ashed Veiler, Impermanent, and stuff like that, then you can normal summon the TriBrigade, go for Broom, then Link 3 for this, and then you can get a search for Revolt. And it's basically enough to keep you playing, because if you get hit by so many hand traps, your opponent is not going to have too many cards in their hand, so it's not like they're going to be able to push through all of those cards. And this card also gives you another follow-up, which is my main focus of the deck, to always have a follow-up, even if my combos get interrupted. And for the Link 4s, we have, of course, one copy of Shrek. I only summon this with Revolt, but even if I don't use Revolt, just having this in the extra deck to push during the late game by just normal summoning one of the TriBrigades and going for a Link 4 just like that is very important, and it also gives you another follow-up. And we also have the one copy of Appaloosa, which is very good, because this is the card you summon most of the time when you're trying to go for the broom combo because you're not going to have just another monster most of the time. So this is why you summon a Link 4, then you search a Revolt, and Appaloosa with Revolt I think is good enough to beat most decks, especially if you back it up with a couple hand traps. Now for the side deck, we have one copy of Pancratops. Now the side deck, of course, you can adjust however you like to your format. It doesn't have to be like this. I'm just showing you what I played, and I think Pancratops is a really good card because in a random format where there's a lot of variety, this card gets a lot of value, especially against Rogue because it's such a good card. We have 2 copies of Common Goose. This is mainly for dry turn. You can play Ruler if you want, but I felt like if I'm going to face decks like Shadows and other stuff, I feel like being able to get rid of the monster instead of just negating it is more beneficial, because what if I cannot get rid of it with my own combo and then it just gets its effect back, or if my opponent disrupts my other combo with other cards. So this is why I felt like just getting rid of the monster altogether is much better, so I feel like Kaijus work better for me. We have 3 copies of Artifact Lancia. This card, it's not main deck worthy, but it's still a very powerful card against a lot of decks, especially against TriBrigade, so this is why its card's here. Also against Dogmatica, Invoked Shadow, it's really good because you negate Alistair, they cannot Maximus, so it's a really good card. I am playing 3 copies of Twisters. You can replay this with Lightning Storm if you want, but the problem with Lightning Storm is that it's only good going second, so if your opponent doesn't set stuff, because this card is, Lightning Storm is good, I feel like, against decks that rely completely on backrow, like Subterrors, like Altergeists, but Twisters, you can use this offensively, you can use this defensively, because you can just set this and you just destroy field spells, like Meltdowns, like the Boot Sector Launch and other stuff, or Legacy Guard Dragon. I feel like this card has a lot more value, but of course, a more blowout card that would be Lightning Storm is much better in those types of scenarios. We have 3 copies of Evenly Matched. I'm enjoying this card. Ever since TriBrigade became a big thing, I've been playing this in the side deck for a long time, and being able to hit monsters and back row at the same time is very important, because we're in a format right now where you don't rely either on only monsters or only back row, and this variety makes it very difficult to side, so you have to be very careful with the cards you choose. But I think Evenly Matched is one of those cards that gets extremely high value in formats like this, because you can hit multiple cards and your opponent is only going to have to choose one to stay with, so they can try to interrupt you. So this is why this card, in a format where there's a lot of variety and the decks don't rely on particularly one kind of thing, like in a super combo format like Adamancipator where they had only monsters. Yes, of course, in formats like this, Dark Ruler No More is better, but in formats like the ones we have now, I feel like Evenly Matched is much better. And I'm playing 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. It's the only card I'm siding when I'm going first, just because, like I said before, you lose to cards like Droplet, Dark Ruler No More, and you cannot stop them otherwise, so you need to play this card. Yes, you can stop them with Imperial Order, but I'm already maining that, of course. But yeah, this card, I think, just gives you the extra line of protection you need in order to be able to play through those cards. So yep, that's the deck, guys. And I've seen a lot of stuff in this format, and I couldn't be more happier because we have so much variety, and I hope that it lasts for as long as possible. I know Konami is going to have to end this format eventually, so decks like Sword Soul, Flanderies, and Phantom Knights with Brave Tokens and Enforcer can become basically the top 3 decks of the format, and just these 3 decks. But as long as we have the cards we have now and the decks we have now, we're going to enjoy a format that is actually really diverse, and I couldn't be more happier to be able to play competitively in a format like this. So yep, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.